Started. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and sharing your Saturday with us here at the Firehouse Art Center. My name is Elaine Waterman and I am the executive director here. The Firehouse is a nonprofit art center in the heart of downtown Longmont on 4th and Kaufman, providing life-enhancing art experiences through art exhibitions, education, and cultural events. Our artist talks are casual chats with artists, curators, members of the creative community, and creative entrepreneurs with a focus on how to build community within the arts. Firehouse Artist Talks give the community a chance to ask questions and get to a deeper level with the art on our walls. We are taping this talk, and you can find it on our YouTube channel, along with our past artist talks and presentations. I wanted to start with a couple of updates from the Firehouse Art Center. We do have live drawing tomorrow, and also the last Sunday of the month. We also have weekly art classes and monthly meetings for songwriters, filmmakers, writers, artists, and more. Please visit our calendar on the website. A shout out to our sponsors, LGDA, Longmont Creative District, SCFD, which is Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the Longmont Community Foundation, the Community Foundation of Boulder, Boulder County Arts Alliance, and to Colorado Creative Industries. We couldn't connect our community to creative and life-changing art experiences without your help. If you would like to donate to support our programming and exhibits, please visit our website or donate at the front desk. And our website is firehouseart.org. And lastly, in the spirit of healing, the Firehouse acknowledges and honors the Arapaho tribe, the original people of the land upon which the Firehouse sits. We also wish to acknowledge all other indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado home. It is because of their hardships and sacrifices that we are able to be here today sharing this art with you. The Firehouse believes that we can only grow when we have a better appreciation for the history, legacy, and contribution that the tribes have made, not just to this region, but to the nation. I am so excited to be here today with three of the artists represented in Ectoplasmas de los Fantasmas, Grace Gutierrez, who was our guest curator, Justin Mays, and Izzy Lozano. And I wanted to acknowledge that Carlos Fresquez and Tony Garcia and Josiah Lee Lopez are not able to be here today, but I just wanted to acknowledge them as contributing artists as well. There are so many things to talk about, and I know we could spend hours just chatting, but I first wanted to talk about the exhibit, then get into Los Fantasmas as a collective, and then talk a bit about identity and culture as it affects each of your art. So just starting with the exhibit, how did the name of the exhibit come about, Ectoplasmas de los Fantasmas?
So really it was, we applied to show here and we were offered a month of printmaking. It's really just a play off of our name. Los Fantasmas is like ghosts or the unseen. And we were just trying to like spitball ideas. Ectoplasma, it just reminds me of like Ghostbusters, and it's the goo left by ghosts, and month of printmaking. It's just like the processes of using inks, and it was literally just like a play off of ghosts leaving a mark. But then I always feel like when you do a show, you have to write this like academic kind of languaged statement. But I feel like it gets down to the root of like why we're here and why the group was formed, and it was to like represent the unseen. So it's not just our mark; it's like us representing others who are unseen, and yeah, so just leaving our mark.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were selected for Month of Printmaking, and just to let you guys know, Month of Printmaking, or MoPrint, is a volunteer-led biennial event celebrating the art of making original handcrafted prints to inspire, educate, and promote awareness throughout Colorado. So MoPrint is a culmination of over a century of rich printmaking history. So I know that all of you are involved in many different mediums, from stencils to painting, to screen printing, to ceramics. Do any of you here consider yourself primarily printmakers?
I have at one time. I don't consider myself to be primarily like really anything in terms of like identifying as an artist with the medium. I'm just an artist, and in printmaking, I was trained traditionally in undergrad, and I went to graduate school where I continued to work as a printmaker, but like challenge what the parameters of printmaking is or could be, So I mean, it's like part of my foundation in terms of how I break down imagery, how I think about like drafting a piece, like all in my head, and how it's breaking down printmaking in terms of the layers, and like reading it something from basically the background to the foreground, in terms of like layering is like kind of just built into me, at this point. Even though I don't necessarily think of myself predominantly as a printmaker, even though much of my work, whether it's on paper, canvas, or wood, might have a printed element in it, I associate printmaking specifically like as when I was in school, it was like you have to make this edition work, and as a printmaker, you're making replicas or editions of an image. So I don't really subscribe to that as being a part of being a printmaker, and maybe because of that, I don't really think of myself as primarily a printmaker. I maybe think of myself as a like image generator. So.
Yeah, I'm predominantly an oil painter. I mean, I think what I'm showing here today is like my first print silk screening experience, and I enjoyed the process, but I do identify as an oil painter. I like that process.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think like the longer I spend making art, the less I like being associated as like a painter, which I feel like I was always like a painter. Like it still is kind of something that is a go-to medium for me, but I hate being like pigeonholed into like that is who I am, like because I'm able to do other things.
And lastly, the thing I'll say about printmaking as far as like an art form, I think the power within printmaking is really within the multiple. Whether it's like the dissemination of information on a like large, massive scale, or whether it's just like the ability to repeat images like in a pop art fashion, like Andy Warhol or other big names that have used it in the past, So I mean, I think whether you're those names or not, I think the power is in being able to generate like multiple things,
Yeah.
and have, a large vocabulary as a result. So.
Yeah, and I know Josiah's not here, but as far as being, like, I think it's really interesting to be pairing like printmaking or stencils or something that is so repeatable and usable, and you might already have it created in terms of street art. So I know a lot of,
Correct.
yeah, so because in terms of street art, like it could be something that could be painted over. So
Sure.
spending all that time, I just think it's really interesting.
Yeah, not to speak for him, but I mean, I've known him for a while, as worked alongside each other's artists. And as a street artist, I think like, the stencil is a way to like ensure the like repetitiveness or the multiple of that image. So for example, like it might get painted over by whoever, but you can always go out and do it again because you have the substrate, and, little like print history is, one of the first like works of art by man ever produced, I can't remember the caves, you can look it up, or the handprints on the wall, which are essentially a stencil, and which is in definition of like modern print would be like a repeatable mark, right? Or a mark made by man that's like reproducible, right? In any sort of fashion. So that being the first stencil, so to speak, and then it being repeatable would be arguably the first stencil. So I would subscribe that prints and stencils, or whatever the matrix is it's a repeatable, man-made mark, then it's pretty much a print, even a footprint or whatever, obviously a footprint,
And the idea of it being immediate, you don't want to spend a lot of time there
Right.
drawing something out, and the cops pull up.
Yeah.
So it has to be something that can be done immediately.
Right.
And honestly, some of the first things that I did, like in high school, were stencils, and I still see them like on sidewalks around Longmont, like
Your stencils?
like golden ponds and like
Which are
like,
yours?
like I could show them to you.
I totally want to know now, because I've seen some at Sunset, and I was like, oh, who made those? That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's just weird to like, I don't know, like be here and like look back on these marks that I've made. And I even then I never like identified as like a printmaker, like even yet as an artist, but it's cool to look back and just think like, you leave marks and it's good. It's
Cool.
good to look back on.
So we're all talking about mark making, and then it kind of leads back to the exhibit and also Fantasmas as a collective. So what is Fantasmas Collective?
Again, like Grace was saying, we call ourselves ghosts because we're either never seen or we're briefly, it's like, I think I saw a ghost, and I think I saw a Latino or something, in a textbook, right? I mean, when you flip through textbooks, most often you find that there's really not a space given to us. And when there is, it's usually on the back or something, so people will thumb through their book. I think I saw, something by them. But when we started, that was, the goal was to be seen, to put ourselves out there. We often say that, we want to represent those who don't have a voice. I've always kind of felt like I came out of physical poverty when we moved from the projects into a real house. Projects were still 2 blocks away, but physically we moved out of poverty. But there's still a lot of us that struggle to get out of the mental poverty. And I think one of the easiest ways to help kind of leave breadcrumbs so that people will follow is to use art. Giotto used the murals in a church so that those who were illiterate could see the stories of the Bible and understand them. So I think as Fantasmas, we try to hook our audience. We'd like it to be a Latino audience. It can be anybody, but we want them to see it. And I think with iconography and symbolism and all those things, we kind of draw them in. Then they start to piece things together and start to ask questions, is what we hope.
Mm-hmm.
I think our work challenges, and we also hope it inspires and educates at the same time.
And I know this is like, I guess, second iteration, because I know when you first started, was it in the 19...
Yeah, it's in 1998. The founding members, Tony, Josiah, and myself, we all graduated around the same time, and we had all studied under Carlos Fresquez. And Carlos had an idea. He's like, hey, I think we should try to form a group like the other Chicano groups that you might have heard of were ASCO, the Royal Chicano Air Force. I'm sure I'm going to miss a couple of others, but there was always this idea of a collective, having that group mentality, because as an artist, you're often by yourself, you're often isolated. So having a group is nice because you can create your work, get feedback, kind of maybe grapple with some of the criticism you get from your mates, and push your art even further. So that's one of the reasons why we work as a collective. And it's kind of, we started in '98. There were 4 of us. We've just welcomed these 2 into our group. And we wanted to expand. We hope it expands. If there are any other female Chicano Latino artists that are willing to work with us, we are ready to listen and work with you.
We'll put the information on how to contact.
Yeah, because we feel like, for the longest time, it was 4 guys. So we need the female aspect. We need that desperately.
Feminine energy.
The feminine energy.
So you kind of answered my next question, why form a collective, but what have been the best parts and then also the most challenging parts of being in a collective?
I feel like collective mentality. I feel like I've only known this group a couple of years now, but I feel like we know what each other are about and what we're making work for and why. And I'll sometimes fear making something or have doubts, but I think just having the presence of these people behind me, I'm braver, and I feel like I can present things that I maybe wouldn't do just by myself. So that's a big thing that I've felt.
And do you end up I know that there are pieces in this exhibit that are collaboration. Do you find that you collaborate more, or how does that usually work in the?
Yeah, I think collaboration is a natural thing that happens with collectives, especially printmaking. The amount of additions that come from printmaking, it's just more imagery and more layers, and I don't know. I feel like printmaking naturally translates to a good collaborative thing. But I don't know, I feel like even just our shows where we make separate work, it still feels like a collaboration, the themes come together, and
I feel like with the collective sort of mindset, you're able to reach a broader group of people because you have multiple individuals with all their own sort of resources and abilities and networks that they bring to share with each other, especially we're in a show setting, we can all, bring our own crowd, and we can also bring our own skill sets to the table when it comes to whether it's reaching out to, the Firehouse Art Center in this case, or any other institution or gallery that we might want to engage with. We all can perform different roles. Challenges, for me personally, is having to check my email, my personal email, that'd be the biggest challenge. Other than that, it's pretty, it's pretty straightforward, and I think we all kind of do a really good job of, I don't know, moving from point A to point B and getting there. But I mean, the thing with, collective or not collective, there's just strength in numbers. So.
Yeah. I was going to say that we're stronger together.
Yeah.
But I said this the opening night, it's also like being in a band, in that, we can make great music, and we can make great things happen, and it's amazing, it's awesome. But at the same time, too, we also know it works like a marriage, in that we have to compromise. And oftentimes, I think, in compromising, you're not always going to, both parties aren't going to be happy. So I think in that particular space, when you're being challenged with something, you're like, well, I didn't want to put words in my painting. You start to discover things about yourself. You start to challenge yourself a little bit, and maybe you open up to the experience, and maybe you don't. But either way, I think the challenge is important.
Very cool. And now that we talked about collective and then challenge yourself as an individual artist, I kind of wanted to speak to your individual experiences as artists. And in the gallery guides that you have, there are the bios, so I won't really get into that, and I hope that you end up reading the gallery guide. But I wanted to speak to Justin first. And I was reading a couple of articles that you had been a part of, and one of the questions was about the 3 people that you would like have dinner with or something.
Okay.
But anyway, so your answers were your tia, Becca, and then also E.C. Cunningham, who you said was a mentor. Is your tia Becca, is that?
Oh, in the picture? No, that's Tia Becca is like one generation away. That's like a far more distant relative.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, but if that I would take them as well. Like any tia really, like any tia, like or like even cousin tia would be cool. That's not been here. That's older, that could come and bestow some wisdom. I just particularly on my tia Becca, like that's my mom's sister. Like I was like pursuing like what I thought was the like correct path for me as an artist in order to achieve what I thought I was trying to acquire on that path, right? And as a result, I was like, left home, left her, she was sick, before I'd even left, and, kind of progressively got worse. Like it was in and out, and this was at a time when I was in grad school, and it was like trying to focus on that. I didn't really come home, like as often as I could have, in spite of her situation. And it was like, even from her and other people, it was like, oh, well, just do you know what I mean? You have to like work on yourself and focus on what you want in order to do that. And I did, and I, was back here and there, but I just like was barely able to scratch the surface with the amount of time that I, did offer. And so after it was all said and done, I had this degree, I had all this work, I had this like, story attached to that, and this narrative that I had been pursuing, but I just like felt really like some type of way. And E.C. Cunningham, I'll throw in the mix. Same time I was in grad school, the phone call that I got while I was like working on like the middle of, I can't remember what degree, but I was like working on a thesis show at the time, and I got the call that she was like gone, right? And then it was like 2 days later, literally 2 days later, I got another phone call, and it was like, E.C.'s gone. And it was a professor and good friend I had, mentor. He was a printmaking professor at Metro State, and he killed himself like 2 days later. Not that those details are important, but it kind of was for me, because it was like, he didn't seem like that type of guy. So it just took me like out of shock. And as I'm going through all this, like kind of being selfish in a certain way, but like with the approval of people, right? It's like, I lost 2 very important people to me, and he, had reached out several times. So anyway, all these things where it's like, oh, I could have, or what if, right? So I mentioned them too, just because I really felt like they were removed from my life at a time where like I was not present in the way that I am now, and I'm not engaged in, with relationships in the same way back then as I am now. And so, yeah, so it was a big lesson. Both of them represent like huge learning lessons and huge like opportunities for growth. And yeah, so that's why I answered those 2 people. Yeah. and now I don't feel the same way. Like, I mean, they're great, but past, present, like, right now, if I had the choice, was it past, present, or whatever, I would just stay with my family, Grace, and my 2 boys over there. Like, I would always choose them. So, but they weren't in my life then, so, yeah.
And then you talked about being in your BFA programs and MFA. So you focused on printmaking. But I've looked at your past work, and I see that you work with many different mediums, from like found items, and things like that. That's a lot of variety. When planning out your pieces, how do you select what mediums you use when you want to present your message?
Oh, well, I don't even think that way. Like as far as like, oh, I want to say this, or I'm gonna make this. Like it's really so much more of an intuitive feeling thing. I just like begin, and like. And it's happening through me, if you will, like the whole process is happening through me, and the communication is happening like internally and intuitively and through me, meaning that like for like lack of a better word, like to tie into like the ghost and ectoplasmic idea or supernatural realm, it's like I'm channeling something. Like I'm on a vibration, I'm on a frequency that's that I'm just tuned into. And so all that information, all those ideas, everything from color to just whatever, it's like, it's on that same level, and I'm just tapping into that vibe and I'm writing it. And so like, and it's crazy, but it's like, and I may have like some resources or some, whatever, there's music playing, I've made other work, I've made so many stuff, I have like images lying around the studio, but I could just like, I'm just like tuning into whatever, and I don't actually really think about what I'm going to say, I just am saying it as I'm creating it, and like my message is just like built into like my autobiography and like what I'm going through at any given moment of my life as I'm generating this stuff. And my responsibility is, as for me, is just to like really like whatever, document this thing called like human experience, or if you will, like in my own fashion, as part of healing, as part of growth. And and if like people want to call what I'm doing art or perceive it as art and allow me to present like, because then I could curate all that stuff after the fact. Like I could just have a bunch of stuff and then I could curate it afterwards, and then make a specific statement to a specific crowd if that's what's required, if that's what's necessary. But that's not like my thing. Like I'm just like making it. I'm just expressing. I'm just releasing. I got a lot that's in me and needs to get out, and I have a lot that I'm receiving that I need to put out there for other people to receive. So,
Beautiful.
yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, it just kind of happens,
Yeah. No, totally. That was an excellent answer.
Yeah.
And then Izzy, I see that you've worked with Denver Public Schools for over 17 years, and have also taught at the Artist Student League and Lakewood Cultural Center and Metropolitan State University. Is teaching a big part of your creative process, and is it hard to maintain your own kind of like creating as well as teaching?
I'll answer the second part first. It's exhausting. And the younger you go, the more exhausted you get. I liked the high school, college arena because of the level of discourse and the kind of ideas that are thrown around. It kind of springs, I don't know if it's part of the creative process. I would have to say, I guess, yes, it is. Because all of us, having studied under Carlos Fresquez, I remember one evening he said, look, I will show you how to do this. I will show you how to draw, I'll show you how to paint. But you gotta make me a promise that you're gonna show the next person just as good as I showed it to you. And so when I teach watercolor on Monday nights at the Lakewood Cultural Center, or I teach it at Metro State on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm giving everything I've got, the last full measure of what I can give, because I'm under that pressure of paying it forward the way Carlos wanted us to do. And I don't think there's another way to do it. So I do get to the end of a teaching day and it's like, man, I want to paint. I'm so tired. Oftentimes I have to say to myself, commit to a little, but deliver a lot. And I tell that to my students. It's like, okay, look, just give yourself 10 minutes with watercolor. Whether it's a video on watercolor, a book about watercolor, you're doing a watercolor, you give it a layer or whatever, and then just walk away. 10 minutes. Don't give any more. That 10 minutes slowly turns into 20, which turns into 45, which turns into a couple of hours, and the next thing you know, it's 2:30 in the morning, is the hope. But a lot of my energy, like Justin was talking about, that it does it through me. I find myself in that zone also in teaching, as well as when I do my work. So I think they are linked.
Cool. And then you spoke about how this was one of your first silk screening experiments. So your easily confused series, the text changes, but the image remains the same, which is obviously how we can use printmaking for replicating. Can you talk about these pieces specifically, and what is the meaning behind them? Are they supposed to be viewed in a certain order? If so, I apologize if we hung them incorrectly.
Well, Grace and I, right before you guys walked in, we were talking about the idea of what's called rascuache. This word, I'm trying to remember where it exactly came from, but the word rascuache means kind of thrown together. You've heard of, what is it, jerry-rigged, kind of thing. When I first started painting, the medium is just too expensive. It's just way too expensive. So I would pull boards out of the trash and say, okay, this will sit still, I can paint on it. And that's what I would do. Well, I was digging through trash and I found this kind of like this professional development program that somebody might have been doing. And I cut it in half because I didn't want them to be totally recognizable, totally understandable. So they have certain words on there that might actually deal, going back to the idea of mental poverty. So yeah, I found it's a found object with that silkscreen put on top of it, and it was a painting that I had done before, and in the same vein as what do I want to call it? I don't know. The beginning of a movement, the beginning of a revolution. People are posting things with the paste on the walls and stuff like that. And I kind of felt, that's what I want to do with these. I want to go and slap them on the side of a wall, paste them up, and, see how people react and whatnot. I do have to say, a lot of people have asked me about the image. They said, did you paint that just recently because of Trump and what's going on with our country? And I said, no. I did the painting in 1996. And in that era, people kept asking me, did you paint that because of Columbine? I was like, no, I didn't do that either. A lot of my work generates from the political literature that I was reading at the time in the 90s, Frantz Fanon, Malcolm X, George Jackson, people like that. And so that idea of kind of the immediate, kind of throw it up, post it, see what happens kind of thing. So that's where this work has kind of come from.
And then Grace, I know we talked about this kind of before the talk started getting recorded, but I know your recent work has been in painting and ceramics, and printmaking is kind of a departure. How was that for you? And can we talk about, and in the question we had mentioned repeatable lexicon, and what does that mean? So just like a personal vocabulary that you've created with the prints that you're doing.
Yeah, well, yes, printmaking really is a departure for me, but it's just another way to speak this language that's, like they've both said, it's just I'm creating because I have to. It's in me. It's just this constant urge and need. For me, I think imagery and the things that I choose to repeat, it's almost like a diary. It always reflects my research, what I'm reading, what I'm experiencing. So every stamp I carve, everything I paint, it's the people I know, it's the animals I'm learning about, the essays I'm reading, a lot of animal imagery that I do has to do with research that I've done about sexist language with women, and directly how animals and women are treated. So there's a series over there of cows and chickens and pigs, while women are called heifers, porkers, old biddies, so it's directly relates to how women are treated. And then I'm okay, well, how am I treated? How am I treated at work? And how are my experiences then made visual? How am I gonna then make these things visual? So always that repeated imagery without having to be this is what I'm going through. Here's a chicken on a mug, but it comes down to that's why, there's so much more behind it. But it can be playful, and it doesn't always have to be here's all the sad things going on, and all of the bad things happening in the world and experiences of marginalized individuals. But I just kind of hope that that imagery just kind of speaks for itself. I know it doesn't always, but because not everyone's going to look at a chicken cup and be like, oh, that has to do with so much more. But that repeated imagery just comes from a lot more than just like, oh, I think it's cute.
Yeah. So a lot of you deal with very serious stuff in your work, and you were talking about how, you know, it doesn't have to seem so serious, it can be playful. But I know a lot of your work is based on your own cultural identities, so I think all of you have presented work in Chicano and Latinx focused exhibits. How do you balance speaking your truth as an artist of color while also keeping in mind not speaking on the Chicano or Latinx experience as a monolith?
Well, for me, like, Los Fantasmas serves a purpose for me to actually like speak on that, because like I don't really, like, my normal studio practice isn't about, like, that's traumas, like, for me is not so much stuff I'm working through in the studio anymore. Like, as a young artist, like, identity is like very much, I think, a part of every young artist's like story, right? Your femaleness, your maleness, your gayness, your brownness, your blackness, like all of that, I think is going to come up at some point in your artistic like experience, right? And so for me, my foundation, it was something like I felt like I really had to. But I like early on though, I made a decision like I am a Chicano artist. I am an indigenous man, and as an indigenous man, anything I produce and anything I create, anything I speak, anything I produce or live as my culture, day-to-day life, is the way. That is my way. That's how I do it. This is the new way. This is me. I don't necessarily have to like absolutely fall in line 100%. I don't feel obligated to any traditional sort of thing or monolith, you know. And I never wanted to be someone who was only seen as a other artist, like an indigenous, BIPoc, or Chicano, whatever comes before artists. I just wanted to be me. You know, my family calls me Justine. I'm the hummingbird. You know, government calls me Justin. So like, however, whatever. I want that artist, me, and then the artist, right? Rather than the prefix that like pigeonholes me into an identity that is far more complex than anyone can understand with like that word and then artist, right? So Los Fantasmas for me as a collective though, since we are trying to be represented and show this representation to young people that look like us and have a similar story, and those that don't, as a means of access and engagement, then I really use it as a way to express images that speak on specific things that are related to that culture. And so for me, I'm really blessed to have Los Fantasmas as that avenue. Whereas as just a general artist in the studio, there's no obligation to my identity from a cultural place. Maybe it comes up because, you know, tacos are fun to draw every now and then, or like you're on the chick, or whatever, maybe not. Like right now I'm working primarily abstractly, you know, and so there's, and I think there's beauty in being able to release the baggage of the identity situated in whatever category it may be, and then be able to just purely work with form and color and light. It's like, not to like get on some like modernist purist kick, you know, or like Greenbergian theory, but like, but really, for me, it's a like sign of growth for me to not have to have that weight in the studio. So, but I think it is important for every person to work through that. You know, not everyone's trauma is identity based, but like whatever trauma there is as a creative person, you should use your medium to work through that, I feel. Mm-hmm. So.
I'm the opposite. My work tends to be, well, let me start this way. It's a beautiful thing, I believe, to be Chicano because you inherit two worlds. You inherit the European, and you inherit the indigenous. And I think through art and through painting, I've found a way to walk that fine line in accepting both sides of myself. My work tends to be representational. And I do focus on it in the studio because there's nobody else working on my history than a few of us. And so to me, it's vital, it's important to focus on my cultural identity You know, I wish I had the luxury, like Justin, I wish I had the luxury of saying, yeah, today I'm just going to go in the studio and just make color and, you know, all this kind. No, I have to do something that's confrontational. I have to do something that speaks to something. And so for me, that's the important thing is I can't remember there was a black artist, a black American artist who said that anymore, the art world only considers non-representational and abstraction as the only real forms of experience art today. And I was like, well, that pushes us out. That marginalizes us in the art world because we tend to do things that are representational as a Chicano. We tend to. So I don't want to be denied access to sharing my history with people, sharing my experience as a Chicano in this country. I have to say I was born a very angry brown child. And in order for me to exercise those demons, my studio provides that space for me to not only give myself, understand my identity, but share with others that might have, like Justin was saying, have that similar story. And I think that anytime somebody can come up to a piece of art, you know, they often say, well, that's good, I like that, that's good. But you know it's great when they can walk away and say, wow, I think that artist knows how I feel. So to me, it is an important and a vital aspect of art making for me.
I think I used art as a way to navigate culture. I started making art like very seriously as an adult, like early adulthood, transitioning from, you know, teenager to adult, right around the same time. My father went to prison, and he was like who I thought was going to be this like connection for me to like really dig into like learning culture, learning about his culture, connecting with that side of my family. And it was rough. So I was like, how am I gonna like not lose this part of my life? How am I going to refuse assimilation? How am I going to like connect with this part of me? And that was through art. So for me, like art about culture, like kind of defined me. I feel like it always comes down to making work about culture for me, like always. And reflection of culture and reflection of family and their experiences or my experiences or community experiences. But that's what I do. I make work, I share my story, and I just hope that there's someone else who is experiencing the same thing as me or the same insecurities or the same whatever about cultural identity or fitting into community, because that's what, to me, like that's what art is about. So that's kind of my thought on that.
And then all three of you who kind of talked about art coming through you and kind of like having to make art or like that. So there are obviously young artists, and you all have mentioned having mentors and working with youth. And I know that mentorship is something that is very important to each of you. And the Firehouse has a lot of programs with youth and teens. And a question I get a lot is school necessary to be an artist? I know that mentorship is a great way to learn without going to school, but I see that many of you have MFAs and BFAs. What are the benefits to being academically trained, and what are your recommendations to young artists?
For me, my answer to that is just a flat no. No, and unless going to school is part of the journey that you need to awaken yourself to whatever it is that's within you, and you feel that school is going to be the catalyst for you, and if you choose that path, then it most certainly will, whether it's this direction or that direction. For me, I went to school because my parents, didn't go to college. They're kind of self-made entrepreneurs. Both have their own businesses. I run my own business right now. But for them, you know, kind of a rag to riches story, and with us, it was like, you have to go to college, you have to go to college, you know, it's like, this is gonna make your life better, right? So I just kind of followed like that motion, because it's like, at risk of like feeling the disapproval of saying no and not going, you know, I didn't have the courage back then to like, just like, no, I'm gonna do my own thing, you know, like, which is what I really did anyway. And for me, I'm not put words in anybody's mouth, like, especially when you get into higher academia for art, it's about creating more art teachers, it's about creating more professors. And so unless you're on a path to get that MFA and then go teach in academia, you know, I've been there, done that. I tried it. Teaching for me right out of academia was not like, I'm gonna get hired as an assistant professor and then try to like stay in. It's like, for me, if I'm gonna educate, I need to be coming from a real place. And as a student, there wasn't a real place to come from to teach other students, right? And so I think within academia, there's a lot of that happening sometimes. And not that people are great mentors in academia. And I even thought at one point, that's what I wanted to be once now I'm in school. All right, I'm here because I have to be. So let's go for art. Hey, let's go for art. Hey, I'm in college. Yeah, cool, dad. You know, whatever, right on. Yeah, but then, you know, you fall in love with the culture and the people in school, and I love learning. I like reading. It's like, school has nothing to do with knowledge and education, though. School is like an institutional structure that is about making money. It's a business as much as my business is, and it's about making profit, ensuring job security for the next generation of teachers, and to keep clients, which are students, enrolled and paying money. Now that doesn't say it doesn't have anything to offer. I'm just saying, as long as you're aware that that's what it is and that's how it works, and you want to get engaged in that system, and you know where you can find funding or not find funding, or willing to fund it yourself, and you think that monetary investment is 100% worth what you're going to get as a return, then by all means, I support you 100%. But as an artist, if you just want to be an artist, then just be an artist. There is no if or ands about it, and there's nothing that you can't learn, that they're going to teach you in school, that you can't learn either just by trial and error experience, because I've been there, or look up a YouTube video, buy a book, watch Bob Ross, anything. If the goal is to be an artist, then you just need to be an artist. But if school, you determine that school is the best way for you to do that, then do that.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school immediately at age 18, Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design in Lakewood. And I went on a partial scholarship, and I lost the scholarship. I partied. I was so immature. I was did not take school seriously at all. I felt like I was there, and I liked being in that, making and feeling inspired, but I was just a dumb teenager. And I dropped out, and I took an 8-year break, and then I went back to school. And that time in between was so valuable for me to struggle and learn how to work 3 jobs at a time to get by and pay rent. And then that made me realize that okay, I do still want to go back to school. I really did like learning. I'm older now, I'll take it more seriously. But I needed that time to realize that. If I had stayed in school and earned that degree and graduated by 21 or whatever age, I don't think I probably would have done anything with it or succeeded as an artist. But the fact that I waited and learned about the hustle and life's hustle, I was able to then go to school and succeed and hustle and Justin saying, it's not for everyone. I love art history. There are certain aspects of going to school that I've just found so valuable. But you don't have to, and if you do, you allow time to really know that that's for you. I don't know.
Well, I'm in academia, so stay in school and keep supporting me. I think, was it Mark Twain said, I never let my schooling interfere with my education. Mm-hmm. So the answer to the question is no, it's not necessary. I'm the first one in my family to go to college. I was about ready to go joined the military when the conflict in the Middle East, the invasion of Kuwait. I was graduating in 1991 from high school, from a school that did not prepare me for what came next. It did not prepare me. And I was upset with the academic process. And then one day, my counselor says, "You've just been awarded a scholarship that someone lost. Would you like to have it?" I was like, "Yes, I would love that. That would be great." My experience with college was probably the most profound thing that had happened to me at that point, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't an artist yet. I took it by sheer chance. My guidance counselor goes, "Oh, why don't you take a drawing class for non-majors?" And I was like, "Okay." And next thing you know, I meet Carlos Fresquez, and the rest is history. But I think in the academic setting, I've had a bunch of my students at Metro come to me, Latino students who are sitting there going, "You know, I'm here and my family is struggling. Shouldn't I just go get a job and help support and help give my family support? I mean, what am I doing here?" I've even had them break down and cry. And I told them, I said, "Look, it's better that you're here than anywhere else. It's better that you're here, you find yourself here. Because at least here, in the university setting, you can explore. You have a safety net. You know, you can you kind of look into things and try things out, which you don't get when you're struggling out in the real world." So I do encourage people to go to school. I also encourage them to start their own businesses, but I think this is a good way for people to engage the process of making art, and then have people look at your art, and then people critique your art and give you feedback. That way, you know, when you do decide, okay, I am going to go out into the world and be an artist, at least now you have somewhat of an idea that, okay, this is how my work was received. This is how I think the direction I should go, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of elements and a lot of factors that play into schooling that that are beneficial. I don't agree with the cost of it right now, but you know, this is what we have. So I don't know. That was my experience. I think it was beneficial. It worked for me.
And so I want to ask one question and then open it up because I know we're like running late, but we have so many good questions and things that we haven't even gotten to. But Justin, you mentioned having a business. You also mentioned starting a business, and you all talked about mentoring and kind of like paying it forward. And I sense like all three of you have this feeling of like service, like you perform acts of service to your artistic community. So Justin, can you talk a little bit about ABC framing and?
Yeah. So ABC is obviously a for-profit business. We're a custom frame shop. You name it, we frame it. You know, that's the MO. But within that is an opportunity for me to generate wealth and you know, income for my family, as well as like my 7 other employees who, you know, get to like have the lifestyles that they want as a result of doing something we love, which is framing. And I get to pass on that skill, which is really what it's about. We're talking about narratives here. And so, like I said, I might not feel any cultural obligation in the artwork and images I generate to say, hey, this is my culture, I need to teach you about it through my artwork. But my obligation through my culture and also my artistic culture is to pass that on through mentorship. And so even with framing, you get to learn a skill that you can like take anywhere with you. Like as an employee, you can learn that skill. And if you are an artist, which most of the people I employ are, then you now have access to like all of our scrap material to frame your artwork. And you also get to learn how to, these narratives, this is what framing actually is. It's the preservation of memories for a lifetime. So it could be interior decoration, which it is, but I mean, you know, in their frames that come apart, but custom framing is really about preserving memories for a lifetime. And so that's what I teach my employees. And within ABC, there's an opportunity to like access a creative safe space that we call the Hideout. It's in our basement. It's the nonprofit, non-income generating portion of ABC, and ABC really fronts the cost of everything that goes into managing a 2,000 square foot gallery, as well as 5 artists in residence who all have studios that are free of charge to them, 24-hour access. That also includes my mentorship in terms of how to build and generate any type of creative business that they should have, whether it's just them as an artist or if they're trying to do like a t-shirt company or a jewelry business, then, you know, I really try to bestow what I've learned as far as being, you know, the owner of ABC for the last 10 years, like 12 years or something like that, and apply that to their art or their creative mission, as well as being, you know, someone who's had all this education and can really speak from the academic perspective as well as from the real life perspective. And so then the obligation is to really like share what I've learned. Like I said, academia might not be my place to educate and share, but certainly like the residents get to reap the benefits of that, as well as those people like Los Fantasmas who get to come in and use the gallery as a platform to be seen and to be heard. And that's like really what it's about, and focusing predominantly on indigenous individuals as well as like Black and women and, you know, all those things. I'm trying to really target marginalized people within who I share the space with, and then hopefully cultivate growth and connection and community that really ends up feeding itself, hopefully in the long run. So that's like why I do the frame shop.
And then do you guys have, I'll open it to you to talking about mentorship or service to community, and then I will get to questions. So,
I mean, I feel like being in a small town, I mean, it's really not small anymore, but having interned here, I really feel like the Firehouse is like the hub. It's like the heartbeat of Llama Arts. I feel like maybe you've said that. Art is so much better with community. We have skills. Why covet those skills? Like, why not see the community thrive with you? So yeah, I love teaching art. I work with students that don't have art programs at their high schools and do mentorship there. I feel like working at the library is like a very much like community serving job. So I don't know, I feel like a lot of aspects of my life have to do with like serving community, and it feels good and I love it. And it's not about feeling good. It's just about like, I don't know, it just feels right and is so important. And it's really a part about like Chicano culture. It's like looking out for each other and seeing each other succeed. So I think it like comes from that too.
When I talk to my students and they ask me, you know, what should I do with my life if I want to be happy? And I'll tell them, just follow your bliss, you know, do the things that make you happy. And then when they say, well, what do I do if I want to find meaning? And the thing I always say is serve others, you know, give of your talent, give of your time, give of your treasure, and serve. Then you'll find meaning. And Grace hit it on the head, you know, in the Chicano community that I feel like is dare I say woke, we all kind of have this sense of, oh, you know, you understand, okay, we're buddies here, let's link arms and let's manifest our reality together. So there is that link, and like I said, Carlos Fresquez is really the guy, he's the root of the tree for us, and he told us that that's what you do, you serve, you give of your time. So it is important to us.
cool. Well, I will open up to questions now. So if you have any questions for the artists, speak up. We are recording it, so just talk a little bit louder than you would normally. Anyone?
Ready? All right. There are, again, quite a few pieces in this show that are collaborations. Can you guys talk about the actual process in planning the show? From saying, okay, we know we're going to do a show at the Firehouse. It's going to be printmaking. What was that actual like conversation like? Is it emails? Is it in person? Is it like what? How does it happen? Where's the magic?
It's all of the above because it's a collective. Like,
Okay.
you know, we have meetings, but not everyone can make it, so it turns to emails and texts and just, I don't know, like when I collaborated with Carlos, it I was like, I have a ton of paper, so I'm gonna cut up this paper, and then I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna paint on some of that paper, and you're gonna screen print on it, and then I'll take it back and I'll stamp on top of that. Like, it was just like the passing back and forth of paper. I know that's not a very, like, I don't know. Like,
Is this the first show you guys have put together since you've had the two newer members?
I think
No.
No,
we've
we've
had
had
two.
Before that.
This would be the third one, I think, right?
Yeah.
this would be the
at
third.
Hideout, which is the
Oh, very cool.
space over.
Yeah, we do, for the last, I guess, 2-3 years now, the Hideout's been hosting like an annual Los Fantasmas member exhibition, as well as like a couple of exhibitions for like other nonprofits that we work with and bring in those students' work and those artists' work in to share. But like Grace says, it's really just like a text. You're there at the meeting, you're not there at the meeting, you get the email eventually, or this artist here, Josiah Lopez, him and I, we have a couple canvases of each other's, and we just kind of like have them in the studio and like just whatever on them while we have them, and then hey, I see them a little bit later, we just pass it back and forth, and eventually someone says, I think it's done.
We did a show. Fantasmas did a show several years back, and I think because we were sharing the studio, it was very easy to do. It was very, I did this. Can you want to do something to it or something? Add something to it. Then we lost the studio, and I found I wanted to be spontaneous. So I had done a couple of art objects, and then I would just like leave it at their doors and run. And so that was kind of the funnest, the coolest way to collaborate is because Carlos would say, somebody left something on my door. I don't know. It's like, oh, that was me. Yeah, go ahead and do whatever you want to it. So there's different forms we take on. I'm sure it'll change the more we hang out together.
How many members are in the collective right now? I don't
So
think I asked.
6 altogether.
And then
I might have missed it because I came in a little bit late, my apologies. But when, so you have this collective and it just feels like there's this closeness that's either obviously already established and then that sort of starts to build and grow as you bring in new people. And I guess I'm curious, I don't know, being an outsider, obviously, and being like, this sounds so cool, right? And I'm just imagining like this flood of people like, take me. How do you, I guess like, and there's no just one way, but in terms of, you might have a show and then young artists are really drawn to it and then they inquire and then, what's the process in terms of, I guess, becoming involved in this community for either young or even established artists or...
I remember initially when it was becoming kind of an official thing from like the original founders, it was just like 4 friends getting together, doing stuff together, right, for a while with an intention and a mission. And then when I got pulled in the way, I saw it happen as like, it's like, hey, if you like this idea, a lot of people do express interest and want to be involved. And so once that's expressed, then it's like throw them on the email list, throw them on the chat feed, and then, invite, then there's like a meeting. And I remember the meeting that Grace and I were at, the initial one, there was a lot more people there. They just like stopped responding to the emails and or stopped coming to the meetings, and so therefore, like I feel like they're just I feel like it's either you're going to integrate, like make an effort to integrate yourself into it, and I feel like for me that was a very welcoming process, and I imagine it'd be like that for anyone, but like I said, there has to be you have to be like sort of you have to be committed, I guess, to like being there.
that level of persistence is sort of like the self-editing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to be careful. We've had situations where we have welcomed people in, and we were really enthusiastic and very excited about having them. But then we found out that they weren't as committed or serious about their art, and we were just like, oh my gosh, now we've got this kind of like dead weight that we're pulling, and we would say, okay, we're hanging this time at this space, be there, bring your work and stuff like that, and nothing, you know, and then they'd show up the night of the show and say, can I put this up now?
Right, and I guess that was like my question is understanding the delicate nature of that chemistry and that trust
Yeah.
and that compatibility and how do you vet, you know?
Yeah.
Carlos vetted us.
Carlos vets he gives the final
Is
approval.
it the truth?
Yeah, you know.
I think all of us are Metro students, like, you know, at one point, so like we all have like a very similar foundational, like, here's how you do a show type deal, here's like the deadlines, right? So we all share that, I think, that conditioning in common, so it makes it kind of easier, and I think every group has that one, like their natural knack is to be the like, you know, come on guys, you know, and when I think that for us is like Tony and Grace, you know, like, but Tony's really, I feel like communication wise, he seems to be the one that really instigates a lot of the like, here's where the meeting's gonna be, hey, check your email, or, you know, that there's always one that kind of stands out as being, you know, like that's the role they like, you know, so.
But I think it's really great because even through this panel, like you all have very different viewpoints, and then coming together as a collective, I think that's, you know.
Well, and I think it like informs all of us too, you know, like we learn from each other. I mean, I do from everybody, even you all as an audience, you know, being here, you know, and so like, yeah, like we all come from different places and have different stories, but you know, we have this common thread, and then it's cool to see that thread sort of expand into like a multitude of ways, and even with each other, like, oh my god, you know, like the chick thing, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, like, but it's like we, you know, her language is her language, but like there's, I don't know, there's commonalities or different ideas in terms of, like, you know, we share a very subversive way of creating images, and you can see like, oh, I'm not alone in this, or you know, and it seems really, I don't know, trite or like basic to say that, but it really is, oh, I'm not alone, I'm not the only one, you know, so.
Any other questions?
I think kind of on that note, I did want to ask how your work within a collective maybe informs your own practice. You know, if they bleed into one another, or if they're kind of like separate.
Sometimes it works out and it's pretty smooth, you know. But like I was saying earlier, it's like being in a band, you know. You know, we can do things that are just amazing, just spectacular sometimes, and other times you're just sitting there going, that doesn't sound like Stairway to Heaven, you know. And there can be disagreement. There can be. Tony and I have probably known each other the longest, and you know, I wouldn't have an art career if it weren't for Tony. But you know, we do sometimes find each other kind of like, you know, and that's okay. I mean, that's okay. It can be difficult. It's not the easiest thing. Again, it's compromise, it's negotiation, it's give and take, it's all that. But again, you learn something about yourself in this process. You start to question your own ideas and thoughts. I think the thing for me that I've gained more than anything is to look at the approach. You know, I'm classically trained. I studied for a couple of years in Aix-Provence in northern Italy, studying like the craft of painting. And I took it very seriously. And then I get back here, and Josiah's doing things that he's combining street art with acrylic painting so I was like, dude, where are you going to show that? You know? But I started to think too, no, there shouldn't be a limitation. Then I got to see Justin's pieces and the multifaceted kind of ways that he approaches his work. And I started to think about that too. So it's bled into my drawing, I've noticed. So it's a wonderful give and take. It's wonderful. But sometimes, yeah, it can be rough going. You know, I'm shocked. God, 24 years, 20.
Don't count
Oh my God. Never mind.
Going back between like the collective versus my own practice, the collective is nice because there's deadlines and due dates, and there's like specific objectives that like give me sometimes like direction in the studio. So like I'll just play with paint all day, and you know, and it's like, you know, won't give myself a deadline. I have my own space that I show in my own sort of like collectors for sales. I'm not really like out playing the like hunt for galleries and show spaces like that. I'm very blessed and fortunate in that sense. So like I just really just do my thing, you know. and which is awesome, but at the same time, it's just never ending, just, you know, it's like, oh my God, you know, consolidate. And the show and the collective honestly puts me in check, gives me deadlines, gives me missions, allows me to take sometimes all of this stuff and put a direct intention behind it, and then work gets done. So for me, it's nice.
Yeah, I agree with that, and like similarly, like I question sometimes like quality, because sometimes like in my own practice, I'm like, oh yeah, like something sits in my studio forever, but then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like do this show with this group, and I respect these guys. I really want to make sure this looks right. I want to make sure it's installed correctly. I want to make sure that you know quality is there. So I feel like that also like pushes you in a new way too.
Yeah, the standard that's held, you know, you kind of it's this high, you know, and we're not moving it for anybody. So that's one thing it does keep us.
That's what I appreciate about this show is all the approaches are so different, like you were saying. They all come from like different aspects and different layers of how mediums put together, and yet they're all kind of at the same standard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What's next? What's coming up?
Well, we've been doing work with a Pittsburgh-based collective, and the plan is to host them in August and have them share some work at the Hideout kind of annual exhibition, and then they want to host us in Pittsburgh in January of next year. So that's like a big thing that's coming.
Cool.
There's been a constant, ever since we started, there's been talk about us trying to put together an idea, put it in writing, make the work, approach a museum, and then find grant money, find monies to say, okay, we'd like for this to be a traveling show. We'd like to kind of tour not just the Southwest, but anywhere else that'll show us. And this idea in Pittsburgh that we're kind of working on, I mean, it's exciting, you know, to show outside of where you're working, because I'm sure once people see our work in Pittsburgh, they're gonna be like, what? And you're like, what's going on out there out west, you know? So yeah, it's we want to share that. And what we'd also like to do, because Fantasmas is keen on kind of bringing more young people into art, we want to make sure that wherever we go, wherever we show, we'd like to have workshops, we'd like to have classes for young people, and you know, kind of just say, hey, this is how you watercolor, this is how you print make, this is how you paint. So it's kind of, again, going back to the idea of service.
Yeah, I'm going to totally throw another aside, and we can start a whole nother conversation on this, because I know, Justin, you work in music, and you were mentioning it's like a band, and talking about the intergenerational, wanting to bring in younger artists. You mentioned, well, that doesn't sound like Stairway to Heaven. I'm pretty sure that Justin would probably not have picked that song. That's like, I don't know.
As we maybe. Sorry, it's a good one. It's No Stairway to Heaven. I was like, I always remember that from Wayne's World, though.
Right.
No Stairway to Heaven. No Stairway to Heaven. Yeah, well, like, you know, the intergenerational thing I think is important. Like in our community, like elders are huge, and like they're the access point for our past, our knowledge, and our connection to our future generations. So like we can have this like, you know, and so we're an art collective, but I think because we are Chicano based, the majority of us are, you know, identify as indigenous in some way, shape, or form. Like there's the art, and then there is also the mentorship of the culture that's built into that. And I think it, you know, for me, you know, on the younger side, like I still have, there's a lot of little mijos out there that are a lot younger than me, and say maybe Tony or Carlos might not feel as approachable for them, right? But I'm a little more approachable, right? So you know, and we can, you know, have a conversation and just say what's up and meet at a different level. And so I think for the group, it's important to have that variation. So there is a stair step of respect in terms of like where you're at age-wise, right? And not, we're all deserving of respect, but I think the elders are very, very important as well as the young people equally, because, You know, they're going to keep us fresh and informed on how we need to adapt and how we need to change, and our elders are going to like really share that wisdom with us and kind of lead by example. And even if they're saying, hey, do this, they could be saying that, but they're also doing things that you might be like, I don't know. So it's not always necessarily what they're teaching you directly, like hand to mouth, but it's also like learning from what they're doing and observing them and having a group that's like intergenerationally varied, I think maximizes each person's ability to grow from that perspective. You know? So
Yeah, it was Carlos Fresquez, I think, who had a vision where it's like, yes, there's the 4 of us now there's the 6, but eventually what he wanted to see was Fantasmas 10, 20 years out, and it's like, there's a whole new set of faces, a whole new set of people kind of pushing it, moving it forward. So that's really important to us. And just like Justin was saying, to build that bridge between generations and say, yeah, these are our concerns. And say, oh, that's funny, these were our concerns. And so it's helpful to see that and share that.
Well, any last questions before we're going to just break down and do an artist walkthrough, and you can ask the artists about specific pieces as we do the walkthrough, but any other questions for the group?
I guess I just want to say I appreciate all the different perspectives of the same narrative. And I think that's a strength in your group, is that even the education question, it was like a whole range. It was so perfect. And then, you know, and like Justin said, was kind of like exploring the same narrative from different perspectives. It's really, and with only 6 people, I feel like you have such a broad scope of experience. It's very cool.
thank you.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the artists. And I wanted to say the show will be up until May 3rd, so we're going to post this, and if you have time, definitely come in and see the work in person. It's always better to see the work in person. We are going to post after this talk images of the pieces that we talked about. But definitely come in, see it in person, and we hope to see you in the gallery soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.